Okay, well, hello everybody. First, I'd like to say what a great pleasure it is to be speaking at this event. My name is John Clay from Research 4, and I'm speaking to you today from Leamington Spa in the Midlands in England, just south of Birmingham. So this subject of mine is well, it's been a bit of a hobby horse, if I'm being honest. For a little while now, it's an area that's been of great interest for me over a number of years. I mean, my background has been in market research now for almost 13 years, both client side and agency side, and I've witnessed my fair share of research presentations and research reports, both being the recipient of the information, and also I've also delivered a few shockers myself as well, and I think that it's an area that is something that we as an industry we don't do particularly well. I think there's always a danger of us chasing too many nice and shiny new methodologies, using technology to collect information more effectively, which is all incredibly good for the industry, but I think there's often, we often miss something which we can really focus on and make a real difference without spending a lot of money. So I think in this case, what I'm going to speak about today, it's new. It's not really about new MR. It's sort of old MR, if you like, and old MR principles dusted down to give us a fresh perspective and focus, and of course using new technologies, new thinkings around neuroscience that I'll come on to in a moment. But I think this is an area that, as I say, is of great interest of mine. I hope you take from this information which you can use and take forward, and hopefully I'm going to practice a little bit of what I preach as well within the presentation. So, moving on. First of all, in order for me to sort of get to the basis of my argument, I need to look inside your mind. And to do this, I want to use a tool called Prisms. Some of you may have come across this. It's a neuroscience technique, and it's designed to identify behavioural preferences that directly relate to personal relationships and work performance. It's developed by the Centre of Applied Neuroscience. There are some links to their website at the end of the presentation if you want to find out more. But in essence, it creates a map which illustrates how a person is likely to behave in different situations. Now, the colours represent 4 quadrants of the brain. So we have drive, and they're summarised as drive, analysis, expression, and stability. And at the highest level, the left hemisphere, so the drive and analysis, reflects how we behave when we engage in a task or when we're under pressure. The right hemisphere, in contrast, the green and blue, reflects our behaviour in social settings and also in establishing rapport with other people. So each segment has certain dominant characteristics. So based on completing a number of questions within an inventory, it creates a personal profile of you and where you are more likely to demonstrate dominant characteristics within each of these segments. So the 4 segments: expression, stability, drive, and analysis. With expression, people tend to be more flexible, multitasking, energetic, persuasive, gregarious. These are quite sort of creative. These are creative ideas people, if you like. Within stability, we've got supportive, caring, patient, understanding people. Drive, this is where we have decisive, self-starting, competitive, and ambitious people. Now, with analysis, these people are more quality-focused. They're more attention to detail. They're more thorough and guarded and well-organized. Analytical, maybe a little bit cautious, careful, very slow and methodical in the way that they work. So, at the simplest level, I mean that's a summary of a lot of analysis that goes on within the PRISM report. But at the basic level, for the point I want to make in this short presentation today, I want to put stability to one side and the stability segment to one side. I want to use the segments expression, drive, and analysis. So my proposition is that analysis is typically the sorts of people that work within the market research industry. And some typical job profiles that are created off the back of the PRISM analysis, it reflects that. So these are people who are delivering the information, delivering the market research information. In contrast, we have expression and drive. Now within the expression and drive segments, these are people who are our clients, if you like. These are people who are the recipients of the research information, and it's their needs and their requirements and also how we communicate to those people that we need to really understand, and that is what I don't think we do particularly well. We don't tailor our communications to those people. So let me explain what I mean. So here's our hero. Here's Steve, the market researcher. Now what turns him on? You know, he likes quality, planning, and detail. Very logical, thorough, accurate person in terms of the work that he does. He's very good at looking for errors in information. He likes quiet isolation. Let's not get away from the fact, you know, he's probably quite a sort of shy guy, quiet guy, likes his own company. You know, he's that sort of profile that I think typifies, and I'm generalizing, of course, but you know, it typifies the sort of person who is developing and delivering this market research information and communicating the findings. Let's move on to Dick. Now Dick is the client. He's represents the drive segment. He's the sales director. Now he hates indecision, bureaucracy, slow pace, excuses, a lack of initiative. He doesn't like overly sensitive people or long explanations. I personally, from my career, I've come across a number of people like this, and they're very, very difficult to please with market research because it's information they don't need. It's getting in the way of their process, of their sales targets, of them actually coming up with an idea and running with it. However, if you do get on the right side of these people, they're incredibly good at promoting research because even though they do have these sort of these dominant characteristics, they are very analytical people and obviously very smart people as well. But you know, they don't suffer fools gladly. They don't want a lot of discussion and superfluous information. So finally, the third person in our story, this is Pippa, and she's the marketing manager. Now, she hates routine, boredom, narrow-mindedness. You know, these are sort of traits that describe her. But she doesn't like a lot of detail and structure. You know, she's an ideas person, a very visual, creative person who wants information delivered to her in a way that she can understand and process. So it's about being more visual with Pippa, and I'll move on to that in a moment in terms of what I mean. So there we have. So we've got our market researcher who's representing the analysis segment, Steve, and then we've got Dick and Pippa who are our clients. So Steve needs to understand how to communicate to Dick and Pippa more effectively. Right. So how do we do that? Well, we have three key aspects of communication design, in my view, that help us to get the message across. And these are simplicity, imagery, and a story attached to the findings. So, what I mean by simplicity, it's not dumbing down. It's about prioritizing and making a clear statement of intentions. It's about focusing on a key theme. And it's something I'll come on to in a moment. Imagery, because of how the brain processes information, we are much more effective at remembering pictures than words. Now, the final part, the story. Now, the story provides the emotional hook to aid memory, and it adds context to the data. So really, in simple terms, what I'm saying is that we need to tell a simple story with pictures. I want to explain what I mean by that. So, in terms of simplicity here, so on the left we've got Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the celebrated French aviator and writer who wrote Le Petit Prince. He said that a designer knows he has achieved perfection not when there is nothing to add, but when there is nothing else to take away. On the right, we've got Steve Jobs and Da Vinci. Now, when I was doing my research for this presentation, this quote was attributed to both Da Vinci and Jobs. Now, I actually think it was Da Vinci, but it obviously could apply to Jobs as well. You know, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. In terms of what Steve Jobs does, and we'll cover a bit more about him a little bit later on in the presentation. It's not just his presentation secrets that have been, been crafted together into a book. It's not about the product design within the Apple products, but it's about it's about things like his method of speaking, for example. His lexical density, if you like. He speaks very simply, much less abstract. He speaks with fewer words. He gets to the heart of the communication and what he's trying to say. And I've got some examples of that a little bit later on. So remember Dick, why is simplicity important? Well, he needs information as brief and as to the point as possible. We need to avoid any more detail than he needs to know. Let's not talk about things that are going to happen in the future. Let's focus on the key points of the information, of the research report and use in the business. So it's important, we simplify complex information. I'm embarrassed to say the chart on the left there is a chart that I used at a board level presentation at a client about 3 years ago, and I can sit here squirming in my seat at how wrong that chart is. Now I know what I know based on the research and what I've sort of come across within this whole area. We need to place numbers into context so people understand what they mean. That chart is too busy, there's too much information on there. Even now, reading back on the chart now, I don't understand what it's trying to say. So we need to simplify that information. Edward Tufte wanted the data to speak for itself. He talked about graphical elegance being found in simplicity of design and the complexity of the data. So the simplicity of the design reflecting the complexity of the data. So we really do need to simplify that information. So we need to get to the core of our communications. Now we have to master the art of exclusion. Now this is what I mean by the information being simple. We're stripping down the data, the research findings, down to its most critical essence. We have to become a merciless editor of information, and that can be the story. So the big idea. So my belief is that we need to structure our research findings around a central story or key idea to create cohesion. This then supports, and then we support the key idea with detail. Now facts are meaningless without a contextual story. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. Now this is a very, very difficult hours to create an hour-long presentation. Now, a third of that time is spent thinking and crafting and prioritizing your idea. A third on the charts, and then a third spent on rehearsing. Now, during a client debrief, do we spend a third of our time? Do we spend 30 hours rehearsing the presentation? As an industry, as a research companies, I would challenge any research company to tell me that they spend that long on their debriefs or on putting their reports together. I think often there's a collective sigh of relief breathed by the agency when the client doesn't want a presentation. I think that's got to be the most important part of the whole process. This is where we add the most value in what we do, is by delivering that big idea, the information we've crafted and created based on the research findings that answer the research objectives. It's about getting to the heart of the matter and delivering it and getting the right people in the room who are presenting that information. We're not talking about the research director or the MD of the company coming in and being there just to add a little bit of weight to the debrief, who's not had anything to do with the project. Let's get people involved there who understand the data and can talk about the information. So we don't need to. So what I'm trying to say here is that we don't bury the lead. Now I think that's quite a useful metaphor for what I'm saying here. when reporters and journalists are trained, they start their stories with the most important information first, and they call this concept the inverted pyramid, where all the key information within a story is in the first paragraph or 2 paragraphs, and that's the lead of the story. Now, finding the core of a story or the core of your research findings involves a lot of forced prioritization. It's about taking out this superfluous information. You know, as I mentioned, it can be a really painful process because the researcher is incredibly close to the data. They see the value in all the information. But you know, there's a real tendency to gravitate towards complexity. And you know, our hero Steve, you know, he likes detail. But the problem is we have to detach ourselves from that detail and get to the core and the heart of the matter. Little thing about why story is so important. Our brains don't really pay attention to important things. If the brain recognizes an emotionally charged story, it releases dopamine released from the amygdala, and that aids memory processing. It almost acts like a mental post-it note, saying, "Look, remember this bit of information." Coming back to Pippa, you know, our marketing manager, this is a real key area for her. You know, she will react to these visual stimuli. You know, these emotional stories. These will really get her engaged with the research findings. Just an example. I don't know people watching this from overseas, from out of the UK. You know, the UK has experienced very unseasonably inclement weather just recently, with a lot of snow and a lot of cold weather across the country. Now, when this information is reported, you know, it isn't reported just with data. It's not. We just don't have reports saying it was -13 in Manchester or -10 in Glasgow or -5 in London. You know, this information is given a context by stories about real people. You know, the midwives taken to work in a tractor, the construction workers who had to rescue a group of swans who became trapped in ice. It's these sorts of stories that add real context and that emotional hook into the data that make it more memorable. I just wanted to just show you, I'll give you an insight into how I try and craft my ideas and stories, and just a couple of the tools that I use. I use a iPhone, smartphone camera. I use the Evernote app as well, so it allows me to take a picture, take a still of the whiteboard notes, and then just transfer it straight to the PC. So then I have a sort of a record of what I'm trying to do. You know, the whiteboard is, I'd say, the single most important tool that I use. It is incredibly effective from my point of view. My Prism profile, I'm in the green segment predominantly, a little bit of the analysis segment and the blue stability one, but green. So I respond very well to visual stimuli, and being able to visualize what I'm doing. So you know, by drawing it up on a whiteboard using post-it notes is incredibly effective for me, and it helps me to distill the information down into a sort of core idea or a key story. So images, why are images important? Remember Pippa, she needs a visual and unstructured environment. You know, she's a very visual person, responds well to the sort of dopamine effect of the emotional stimuli. And we have far better recall for visual information. If something's spoken, we remember 10% of it. If we see it, it's 35%. But if we combine both the visual and oral delivery, it's 65%. So it's 6 times more effective than it just being spoken. And I think professionals, people everywhere, you know, market research professionals need to know about the incredible inefficiency of text-based information and how much more effective images are. Here, I mentioned Steve Jobs earlier. The picture superiority effect is a concept where pictures are remembered much better than words, and this is especially the case when people are casually exposed to the information for a very limited amount of time. So here in this particular example, the effect was that Jobs wanted to get across the point that the computer, the laptop was thin, so he puts it in an envelope. And this is important because the effect is stronger when pictures are represented as common concrete things rather than more abstract ideas. So the envelope, the laptop is thin. It's incredibly effective, incredibly effective. So let's recap. So the problem, Steve's cognitive profile is very different to Dick and Pippa, and that's something we need to address if we're going to get our communications, make our communications more effective and more heard. Steve turns his audience off because he's communicating the research in a way that he would like to see and not what suits him. So there's too much detail. We're not getting to the heart of the matter. He's not delivering it in a way that Dick, our sales director, or Pippa, our marketing manager, is going to respond and take that information and use it. So the solution is we need to identify the core story or idea in our research findings and then provide a contextual evidence to give that story some colour. And in simple terms, we need to tell visually engaging and simple stories to get across that research message. Okay, thank you very much.